This question is from a student, Ryan, from Northbrook, Illinois, and he asks, how can we make sure teachers don't simply, quote unquote, teach to the test when value-added assessment systems are in place? So clearly, Ryan has been doing his homework. He's asking a very complicated question about value-added assessment models. So let me just back up a little bit and give a quick explanation of what a value-added assessment model is. When I was in Washington, D.C. as the chancellor of public schools there, we had a circumstance where 8% of our 8th graders were on grade level in mathematics in the city schools, 8%, which is a pretty dismal and disheartening figure. But when we looked at the performance evaluations of the adults in the system at the same time, we saw that 95% of them were being rated as doing a great job. So how can you have a system where all the adults are thinking, you know, we're doing great work, but what we were producing for kids was 8% success? We don't think that an organization can operate effectively in that manner when there's such a disconnect between those two things. So in DC, we moved towards a model where the teacher's evaluation was based partially on how much your students grew. And we wanted to do this in a fair way. So we decided to go out and talk to teachers. We literally held hundreds of focus groups with teachers across the city. And overwhelmingly, they said the current evaluation system is not good. We all know it needs to change. So we said, okay, well, what would be the components of a fair and rigorous but also helpful evaluation system? And we talked about the need to include student achievement levels or student performance in this. What the teachers told us was, you know, we think that it makes sense to measure student achievement growth, but what we don't want is to be measured on an absolute level. So what we put in place was called a value-added growth model. And that means that we assess the children that a particular teacher has at the beginning of the year, and then we assess them again at the end of the year, and we see how much they grew. So even a teacher who is teaching, say, 5th grade, say most of your kids are actually operating at a 2nd grade level when you get them. And you work really hard with them, and by the end of the school year, they're at the 4th grade level. That's a tremendous amount of growth. That's 2 years worth of growth in one academic year, which is a huge triumph. But if we did it on an absolute level, you would still say, well, those 5th graders are at the 4th grade level, that you weren't successful, instead of looking at how much they grew. So that's why we think that the value-added assessment models are so important. I also want to note, though, that in DC, what we did and what we're advocating in other states is that the value-added growth model is a part of the teacher's evaluation, but only a part, which means that you also take into account things like observations of classroom practice, their contributions to the school community, how the school overall is doing. So it's important to have multiple factors that lead to a teacher's overall evaluation. I think specifically this idea about teaching to the test is one that we want to address, because a lot of times we hear people say, well, if you have so much focus on the test, and when the test is a part of a teacher's assessment, then all they're going to do is teach the test. And I think the answer to this question is a simple one, which is that people need more information and to be informed more. So for example, the Gates Foundation put out a study about a year ago that showed that teachers who teach to the test, meaning they try to do the drill and kill with the kids, actually those kids do not do as well on the test, don't do as well academically as those teachers who teach higher order thinking skills and critical thinking and analytical skills. So that's one. And then the second thing is that studies also show that kids who have access to a broad-based curriculum that includes art and music and PE and drama, etc., actually do better academically. So I think for those people who believe that the way for kids to see more academic success as measured by the tests is to just focus on test preparation would actually be proven wrong by the data.